Welcome to Not Suitable for Democracy. I'm your host, Nick, and today we're going to talk about the candidates heading into 2026. Now, the Democratic primaries are where it all goes down, and we have some time to prepare, so I want to tell you what to look out for, who is running, what are some key things to think about as a voter and as an organizer, but then lastly, what will it all mean, and what can we think about the future for the Democratic Party? There is so much happening right now that will affect what will be the election results months from now, but it's going to be up to you to make that happen. But also, I want to share some really exciting news that's been happening just as early as this week. So we have a lot to cover. So without further ado, let's get into it. Breaking news, President Trump announced this week that he is interested in having a meeting with Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. Now, this world is very unpredictable, but I have to say, now this is good for democracy. So when Zohran was running for office, the first thing he did is that he went to parts of the Bronx and Queens, where he spoke to voters who supported President Trump and hearing why they cast their vote for him. Now, if you recall, New York City had the largest swing to the right out of many big cities, especially blue cities, here in the country. So the fact that Democratic support has been waning since the 2024 election, this is a wake-up call. So Zohran went straight to the source. And he talked to those voters, and they shared that it was the cost of living, and they felt like they weren't being heard by the Democratic Party. And to be fair, in New York City, we have majorities in the city council, in the state assembly, in the state senate, and our governor. So the fact that we have so much Democratic leadership, but the cost of living is not being handled in a way that can allow New Yorkers to really stay here says a lot. So Zohran made that the cornerstone of his campaign, and the rest is history. He's on his way to be sworn in on January 1st, 2026. And now Trump and Zohran plan to have their meeting in the coming weeks before January 1st, but we also know that Zohran Mamdani has spoken with the White House. So the wheels are in motion. They will have this meeting. I'd be very curious as to what they speak about, but let's be real. As the old saying goes, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. I strongly believe that Zohran is keen and sharp and shrewd enough to keep Trump close, knowing that if he can keep the conversation going and not necessarily get on his good side, but stave off any harm that Trump plans to inflict and unleash upon New York City, it would be in Zohran's best interest to use his communication skills, negotiation skills, whatever he can do to just keep the harm at bay. Now, granted, will Zohran be successful? Honestly, I think Trump will do whatever he needs to do, say what he needs to say, and then honestly, I could see him backstabbing Zohran very easily because Trump is not in it to help the people. He's only in it to enrich himself. So we know the fact that they are both seen as, let's say, outsiders, right? Zohran may be a state assembly member, and we do know, though, he is not a part of the establishment. Trump was not originally a part of the establishment either, but that is part of where their bases do overlap. And here's the thing. Both President Trump and Zohran Mamdani do have some similarities. We know that they are not necessarily satisfied with the status quo. We know that they are both outsiders in their own respects, but we also know that their approach to politics comes down to people who trust them and really resonate with their communication. Now, Trump and Zohran don't sound anything alike, but at the end of the day, we know that they have very loyal supporters who trust a lot of what they say. One speaks in truths, the other one speaks in mistruths, lies, and just flat out false statements. Disinformation and misinformation. All the above. So with that said, it's going to be very interesting to see what comes out of these conversations, how Zohran can keep Trump's harm at bay, but also, will there be an actual chance where they can work together and actually help New York City combat the affordability crisis? Crazier things have happened, and I'd be very curious to see what happens next. In other news, congratulations to Adelita Grijalva, who finally has been sworn in by House Speaker Mike Johnson. Now, Adelita Grijalva is a congressional representative who won her special election months ago, and it took weeks before she was finally sworn in. Now, why did it take so long? We know that there have been other special elections this year, and those representatives were sworn in within hours, if not days, of their elections. Now, the catch being, Adelita Grijalva was the 218th signature, just barely making the majority. The 218th signature on the petition that would release the Epstein files. Now, the vote to release the Epstein files is happening in Congress, and we know right now that President Trump is losing congressional Republican votes, meaning that there are people in his party in Congress who are not backing the president. This is a huge turn of events because not only did Mike Johnson delay this vote as much as possible to not only stave off Adelita Grijalva, but also keep Epstein files and the rumors out of the public eye, out of the immediate attention. But we know it was only inevitable. They delayed, but now the truth is coming out. But what we can also say is that now this provides an opportunity for Democrats not to seize him, but it's actually to rebuild our own party. So what I mean is that if Trump and the Republicans are a sinking ship because they will do anything to protect their pedophile president, then Democrats need to show that they are willing to weed out corruption in their own ranks, not necessarily from what Trump is doing, but from cutting back on the lying, cutting back on the pay to play, cutting back on the politics that have brought us to this level of fascism and broken economy that we're seeing right now in our pocketbooks, wallets, online, your day-to-day, jobs or no jobs. We know things are bad, so now it's going to be up to the Democrats to provide trustworthy candidates and solutions. Can they do it? Well, that's where 2026 comes in. Hey, before we keep going, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for the support, for tuning in. I truly appreciate it. If you like what you hear and want to learn more, then make sure to subscribe to Not Suitable for Democracy on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Or you can follow along for more news and content on Instagram and TikTok. I use the same handle for both, so you can follow at NSFD_pod. So now that we know Zohran Mamdani won an incredible election, history-making election in New York City, he is now bolstered and emboldened the progressive movement where Democrats now have a chance to not only look like they're winning, but actually winning, right? So we know that all the races around the country, I don't think any Republicans won in any of the major races, but more importantly, we also see democratic socialism taking a foothold. Now, I want to say congratulations to Katie Wilson, who is mayor-elect for the city of Seattle. Now, in her election, it was a very close race, and while the election results were not clear on election night, but it wasn't until when they were counting the votes that progressive voters, they came out later in the election. Maybe it's like typical young folks, right? Waiting to the last minute to do whatever you got to do. So they wound up voting toward the end, to the last days, if not on election day. Now, once they came to the polls, they came out in huge numbers for Katie Wilson. And because of that, she had to maintain a 0.5% or above to not trigger a recount. So once she surpassed that threshold, I think after the votes flipped, she was up by 91 votes. But then by the end of the week, she was up by thousands upon thousands of votes. It became statistically impossible for her to lose. So then the incumbent on Friday finally announced his concession. And that's when Katie Wilson, a democratic socialist who ran on housing to meet the urgency of the crisis in Seattle, to win the election for Seattle mayor. So from East Coast to West Coast, we have two democratic socialists who are going to lead their respective cities. What a time to be alive. I am just so excited to see what both these great leaders will do in New York City and Seattle. With that said, democratic socialism is the future. Now, we know that folks have been fed up with capitalism. We've been seeing the harms. We've been seeing the exploitation. And people aren't benefiting from our system, except for the 1%. So how is that going to change the dynamic of positions of power? Well, let's talk about it. We know that more and more progressives are looking to run for office. The organization, nonprofit group, Run for Something, they have been organizing since after Hillary Clinton's election loss in 2016. Someone who used to work on her campaign actually started this group, and she has been building progressive power, giving the tools to young leaders to pretty much take the reins on how they can run for office in their communities, in their districts. And they've had thousands of candidates run, and even tens of thousands sign up because they're interested in running. So now we know that young folks are finally entering the political process, not only as voters, but as leaders. This is very important because right now, if Run for Something, even having the support from Bernie Sanders now, we know that Run for Something is looking to kind of be that pipeline from grassroots energy, people who are interested, to then making a difference in their community and running for positions of power. So the fact that this is kind of like, I don't want to say the heartbeat, but we know it's definitely it will play a huge role in what we're about to see in 2026. Now remember, there's like hundreds of thousands or like thousands upon thousands of elected positions in our country, right? From school board to Congress, there are so many positions of power, meaning these are key decision makers who dictate our day-to-day lives. The policy that they create, the policy they support, or even divert funding to, right? This is what shapes our everyday world. So if we have more young leaders, let alone progressive leaders, this is now going to change the status quo from what we're used to. The pay-to-play politics, the entire, you must be rich and wealthy to win elections, and that's the only way you can even enter the political process, right? We are dismantling that system one by one election at a time, right? I mean, we've talked about AOC and the fact that she was one of the first to break through that mold and really start that wave ever since her election win in 2018. Fast forward, more and more young leaders are stepping up to the plate, ready to run. Now, let's go through some candidates from the local level, federal level, here in New York City, and around the country, because there's a lot to really think about. So let's start with what's happening in Maine. Now, I bring up the state of Maine because that has been a very highly publicized Democratic primary, whereas the race isn't even anywhere near happening yet. And they're all focused on the general election in November of 2026. Now, the goal for Maine is to defeat Susan Collins, the current Republican senator for the state of Maine. Now, people in Maine like her. She is popular there because she has been known to deliver and diverting or by sending a lot of funding to key projects around the state. Now, if that's the bread and butter, no one wants to necessarily cut that off. But here's the thing. Now that she is a part of the Trump regime, enabling his agenda and not fighting back for the people of Maine, she is not living up to the standards and the values that Maine voters hold. So now on the flip side, the best way to get her out of office? Vote for a Democrat. We know that Democrats have a really large base in the state of Maine, considering they are a blue state. But here, now we have a chance to actually challenge the status quo or the way of doing things to unseat Susan Collins. Now, for those who may have heard, it is a very crowded Democratic primary field. There are a ton of candidates that are running, but the one that sticks out the most is Graham Platner, known to be an oyster farmer. But when you hear about his campaign, his message, what he's speaking about, the vision he's painting, now that is where I am sold. I recommend you check out Graham Platner. He is running to become the senator of Maine. Now, of course, he's running in the Democratic primary. It's his first time running for office. Graham Platner, he's the guy. Why? He focuses all about the working class struggle. He focuses on the cost for living. He calls out the billionaire class and the elites of this country who have not only exploited our labor, but more so have made it a mission to make sure that the system is rigged against us. Bernie Sanders came out in full support of Graham Platner very early on during his campaign. I proudly support a campaign that is focused on an affordability agenda that's rooted in the working class struggle, but also leans into progressive policy unapologetically. That is something that should be admired and strived for. Now, you may have heard of Graham Platner because there has been some very heated discussion over his, let's say, respectability politics, particularly around racist comments he's made, homophobic comments he's made, right? Just ignorant, gross, disgusting views, anywhere from sexism, homophobia, racism, found in Reddit threads, Reddit posts, also, I guess, from past comments from colleagues, perhaps. But then also the infamous one has been a tattoo that's on his chest, which is supposed to be reference pretty much Nazism. Now, he is saying that he did not know what the tattoo was. He was saying he got it at a drunk night out with friends. He does claim to also be a history buff, so when people put two and two together, one would think, well, why didn't he not know what that was if he's a history buff? But at the end of the day, you'd be surprised because the people of Maine are actually still in support of Graham Platner. He is leading in the polls. Polls have him up against Susan Collins, Janet Mills, and all the other primary candidates that were in the field. So I think this kind of shows as much as his background may not be qualifying for a candidate to run for United States Senate, people are done with the identity liberal cancel culture politics that have really hurt the progressive movement. We can't just cancel everyone who disagrees with us. We will never, ever be able to move forward as a society. And think about it. Between comments and tattoos, are those the issues that people are going to focus on when trying to keep a roof above their heads or put food on the table? The people of Maine, not all of them, but a good chunk, a good base, still support Graham Platner because they understand they need their government to deliver for them. They may not agree with his tattoos or his comments, but they do agree with his message. And the message being, he wants to fight for you because this government has been rigged against you. So if he is looking to be a staunch supporter of progressivism, that we have to look past the petty differences that keep us fighting amongst each other. We have to come together and focus on the fight ahead, specifically against the 1%. Those who keep enriching themselves at the expense and exploitation of the rest of us. It needs to stop, but Graham Platner is the guy who's going to get us there, especially for the state of Maine in the United States Senate. I applaud his campaign so far. Other than his dirty laundry, I support the campaign he's been running because it's grassroots funded, absolutely focused on the working class struggle, and he has a great vision and message that more Democratic candidates need to run on. Best of luck, Graham Platner, and I cannot wait to see what you do next. And now for some local candidates. I am so excited to be supporting these Democratic socialists. They are from New York City, in Brooklyn and Queens. Here are a few that I would love for you to consider following on social media, donating to, sending a few bucks their way, right? These are the things that will help them build their organizing power, but also get their message out. And right now, we need to build up ahead of the 2026 Democratic primaries, where these state assembly candidates are going to need all the help they can get with their grassroots campaigns. So, from Brooklyn, I'd love for you to support Christian Celeste Tate. He is running for Assembly District 54. I'd also love for you to support Ian Huntley. He is running in Assembly District 56. Both of them have been endorsed by the Democratic Socialists of America in the New York City chapter. So this is a organizing effort right here at home. So if you are also interested in volunteering for them, make sure to check them out because they would love for you to make some phone calls and knock on doors, especially as the campaigns ramp up. Now, bringing it home right here to Queens, we have a few candidates to quickly discuss. Now, first up, we have Mary Jo Bida. She is running to represent Assembly District 36. She is a self-avowed Democratic Socialist running with those values, and she is not a stranger to running for office. She actually ran for office in 2020 in Assembly District 37. Now, that was a crowded primary where there were 3 candidates, including the incumbent, and the 2 progressive candidates lost that election, or that primary. Nonetheless, Mary Jo Bida has been organizing and volunteering and putting her efforts forth with progressive causes and Democratic Socialist candidates, specifically Zohran Mamdani, since the last time she ran for office. So, she has one campaign under her belt, now she's looking to run again, and I wish her the best of luck. And there is another candidate who just announced this week that she is running for State Assembly District 36. Her name is Diana Moreno. I highly recommend you check out her campaign. She has been doing the work for years. Not only is she a loyal activist, but she is staunch in the fight for democratic socialism, and she's a new mom. So she has been doing the work, being compassionate in her community for several years now, while taking care of her new baby. So it's just been so exciting to see how she has grown as an activist and just using that compassion to fight for not only her family, but for the community. So it's really exciting to see. But at the end of the day, check her out, Diana Moreno, who is running for in AD 36. And now for my assembly district, AD 34. Now, currently, I'm represented by Jessica González-Rojas, who is currently running her campaign for state senate. Now, she is a phenomenal and fabulous state assembly member. She's been doing incredible work, leaning on her progressive values while staying true to the district. Now, she is running in a state senate race to challenge Jessica Ramos. Yes, that Jessica Ramos, who endorsed former Governor Cuomo during the Democratic primary, who eventually would not get an endorsement in return, who used to run as a progressive, even supporting Bernie Sanders in 2020, but now she has cut those ties with progressives in the community, with organizers. So Jessica González-Rojas, being the fighter that she is challenging Jessica Ramos for that seat, and I know Jessica González-Rojas will be the Queen of Queens when she wins that Democratic primary. So if Jessica González-Rojas wins that election, who will take her seat? Well, I'm so excited that Brian Romero, he is officially launching his campaign to run for state assembly to represent District 34. Now, Brian Romero, I know that he's been doing such a great job in our community. I've organized events with him, volunteered alongside him, and I know he's been doing the work for a long time. As a native New Yorker, openly queer, and is unafraid to speak his mind, also fighting hard for his community. It's been so exciting to see him grow as an organizer, and now he's ready to take the next step and fight on behalf of Assembly District 34, parts of Astoria, Corona, East Elmhurst. I am super excited to watch Brian's campaign unfold, so make sure to follow him on Instagram, send him a few dollars his way. I know he truly deserves the support. And of course, keep an eye out for more opportunities to get involved because we're going to make sure that he wins this election. Best of luck to all your campaigns, and I am so excited to send more Democratic Socialists to Albany in New York's State Assembly. Okay, last but not least, this one is local and national. I am so excited to share with y'all that Council Member Ossé has officially filed FEC paperwork to challenge Hakeem Jeffries for his seat in Congress. This is huge. The fact that a young city council member is looking to challenge who would be, if Democrats had the majority, Speaker of the House. That is the level that's going on right now. Hyper-local city council member to national figure. This is wild, and I give Ossé so much credit to be that bold and fearless. Now, we know that right now, Democratic leadership is underwater. They are not listening to the people, and millions of Democrats around the country are sick and tired and fed up with the status quo and politics as usual because they have not been delivering, let alone trying to fight fascism. Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, both from Brooklyn, are not doing a good job as they're in their respective leadership positions. So, we know that nationally, Democrats are upset. So the fact that now Ossé is the first candidate to jump into this race and heed that call because he knows, listen, whether he wins or loses, Jeffries needs to be challenged. At the end of the day, I am so excited for Ossé to run this campaign. However, I know progressives, we get a little tribal, right? We get a little tribalist culture where we love to say, yes, keep going, do whatever. Oh my gosh, amazing. But I do want to be, share some concerns because at the end of the day, we do know this is a risk that whenever someone runs for office, especially against someone like a powerful figure like Hakeem Jeffries, it's not guaranteed. So, one of my concerns is actually the lay of the land, the actual district Ossé is running in. His city council district probably represents or overlaps like about 15 to 20% of the district. It's a pretty small size in comparison, so his base of support just by his own city council district, right, it doesn't overlap that much, meaning that his base of core supporters in his district might not necessarily, will not give him the huge boost he'll need in Jeffries' congressional district. Now, on top of that, we have to look at the history of the district. We know they voted for Eric Adams in 2021. We know that they voted for former Governor Cuomo in the Democratic primary recently, and again in the general election. So if they're voting for Cuomo twice, and we know that they're probably more moderate, that's not going to be the base that Ossé is currently speaking to, right? Ossé was actually the first city council member to actually endorse Zohran Mamdani. So after all these months, the base of support in Jeffries' congressional district is actually supporting Cuomo. That's going to be a pretty tough sell to know that Ossé is already coming from a different place from where they're at. And as organizers, we know you got to meet people where they're at. It's not always easy. It's not always fun. But this is one of the challenges that Ossé will have to grapple with. Now, the key that he will need to focus on in terms of strategy is, will he be able to convince enough moderates in the district that Jeffries has not been able to deliver and he is not fighting the good fight against Trump and the Republicans, and simply that he cannot be trusted? We know that if he's taking a lot of money from AIPAC, will that actually hurt Jeffries as much as Ossé needs it to? We don't know. Now, here's the other thing. Well, we also know in terms of strategy that Ossé will need to do a lot of convincing and persuading, but more so, he will have to drive huge mobilization efforts to get the vote out in support of Ossé. But here's the catch. We know right now the Democratic primary for New York, they're typically in June. So well over 7 months for Ossé to really strategize on how to get there. So another concern. As a member of Democratic Socialist of America, I know that the membership, some members, not all, have very strong views on who they allow and who they want to endorse. I shouldn't say allow because everyone is allowed, but the point is, it really is going to come down to the commitment, the history or record of work, but then also what they've done in the past that would give us more trust, but also loyalty to make sure that they are on brand and on message. For example, in the past, DSA had a very strong policy that if you were to accept their endorsement, that you must run as a Democratic socialist, and you would have to call yourself a socialist. So if you're ever doing press rounds or in the media and someone asked, are you a socialist? You would have to say yes. And honestly, that was actually great in terms of getting the word out. Like, yes, we are unafraid of the word socialism. We must call ourselves that. However, that policy also hurt expanding beyond the strong urban centers that Democratic Socialist wasn't a dirty word, right? What about folks in rural or purple districts? Like you would have a much harder time convincing those voters that DSA or Democratic Socialism isn't a dirty word. So by that extension, I believe they haven't been as stringent with upholding that policy. Now I know Chio say he's a socialist, so it's no issue there. But my point is, if these are the types of things that the membership is looking for to exactly how firm the candidate has been or is looking to be in their commitment to the organization and the policies they'll be fighting for, right? What is that going to look like? In addition, we remember AOC, was speaking on behalf of Harris at the convention, saying that she's working around the clock about Gaza. Now, whatever your feelings are on that, we know that DSA was not happy because that doesn't really align with their views on Palestine, which is totally fair. So, Chiose was a member at one point, then he wasn't an active member, now he's claiming he's an active member, so it's not a consistent history, but I can empathize, right? There are times you need a break. There are times when, as an elected official, you are held to a very high standard with the organization. Nothing that's unreasonable, but they do hold you accountable. And if you are a young city council member who is looking to make those connections, even not even young, just if you are fresh in the municipal body, it is going to be hard to create relationships when there are people in that governing body that just don't like or support DSA. So Chio say having to navigate that, it is hard. It is not easy. Now Zoran, he was principled the whole time. Chio say took a break, now he's back. There's an article in Jacobin, socialist publication, that where Chiose had shared why he's a socialist, what the work he's been doing, his commitment, and I give him a lot of credit because at the end of the article, he was really pushing, he was really making the strong case for an organizing push. He knows that he needs socialist support for his campaign, especially for the mobilization efforts, right? Because that would unlock, or the DSA endorsement would unlock volunteers, access to grassroots donors, and a network, right? This is grassroots power that DSA has been building and cultivating for years. Chiose, well, that would be incredibly valuable to Chiose's campaign against Hakeem Jeffries. Now, whether it's to say he deserves it or not, personally, I think he deserves it. I think as much as it's good to have strong discipline values, it would behoove us to, support Chiose, especially for someone who is very much committed to fighting for socialist policies and values. I respect whatever decision the org makes, but at the end of the day, put it this way, even if Chiose doesn't get the DSA endorsement, he will do fine generating grassroots donations, getting press and media attention. He will do very fine getting volunteers to come to Brooklyn. I will gladly go to Brooklyn and volunteer for Chiose's congressional campaign to primary Hakeem Jeffries. I will gladly go from Astoria to Brooklyn to knock on doors for Chiose. And if you live in Queens or you live in Brooklyn, I hope you do too, because that is the magnitude of this fight. If we have a chance to really challenge the would-be Speaker of the House, let's say in 2026, Chiose wins the primary and then Hakeem Jeffries loses, and then he doesn't win the general election if he runs as an independent or something crazy, the Democrats will have to choose a new Speaker of the House if they win the majority, which is bonkers. I mean, it's great because it will then force the Democratic establishment to reckon with the progressive movement that has been building in this country for years and years and years to come. It's finally happening. So if we can actually force Jeffries out, they will have no choice but to grapple and find someone who will be a good leader that not only supports the progressive base, but also is able to keep moderates into the fold. I'm not saying we need a moderate, but what I am saying is that we need someone that everybody can trust. And right now, Hakeem Jeffries, he's not that guy. So at the end of the day, and here's the other thing too, right? And Chiose, he's young. This will be his first congressional campaign. Who's to say he could run again in the future, right? I strongly believe that this would be great. The fact that we need candidates to be challenging the incumbents and the establishment, especially when so many people in Congress are well into their 70s and their 80s. Some of them are sick, or even like when Dianne Feinstein, may she rest, she had missed tons of votes because she couldn't even show up to the job because she was that sickly. If you're unfit for office, you shouldn't be serving. Simple as that. We all saw Biden in 2024. No one was ready to support that. Or many people were willing to not support that. At the end of the day, we need fresh ideas, young candidates to get up and start running, young candidates to get into the we need young candidates to get into the political process and run, but also reform-minded folks who are ready to challenge the status quo and fight for policies that are going to help you and me and everyone across this country. So listen, between the concerns of the lay of the land with the district, the voter base, the Herculean task to ramp up mobilization efforts to turn out the vote for Chi, these are tough challenges, right? And there is a chance Chi Ossé could lose. But I would gladly support him, knowing that this is the fight that we need to fight. So with that said, I am super excited to see what transpires in 2026. There's going to be so many more candidates to look out for, so many things to talk about, and we may even have some candidates on this podcast. So until then, please stay tuned, and if you like what you heard and want to learn more, then make sure to subscribe to Not Suitable for Democracy. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. For more news and content, you can also follow along on Instagram and TikTok. I use the same handle for both, so you can follow along at NSFD_pod. I hope you learned a lot today and really consider supporting these candidates. There are so many great candidates out there and more that we'll discuss in future episodes. But until then, remember, democracy is not suitable without you.